So we're going to be reading about how to heal today. Uh, what is healing? Healing is the beginning of the recognition that your will is God's will. And so we'll be covering both the introduction as well as section 1 to chapter 11. Hello and welcome to Miracles on High Plains. My name is Jonica, and our reader for this session is Atisha B.
Introduction. Either God or the ego is insane. If you will examine the evidence on both sides fairly, you will realize this must be true. Neither God nor the ego proposes a partial thought system. Each is internally consistent, but they are diametrically opposed in all respects, so that partial allegiance is impossible. Remember, too, that their results are as different as their foundations, and their fundamentally irreconcilable natures cannot be reconciled by vacillations between them. Nothing alive is fatherless, for life is creation. Therefore, your decision is always an answer to the question, who is my father? And you will be faithful to the father you choose.
So there's two ideas I wanted to point out. One, this idea we see many times about two different masters, and you cannot serve two masters, that they are fundamentally different and irreconcilable. But the mind will attempt to reconcile opposites. And you have to be aware that this is a temptation of the mind to try to make illusions real, to try to fit together what is very obviously a chaotic world and question many people do, how could God have allowed this thing to happen? This is an attempt to try to explain how what is irreconcilable can be reconciled with God's plan for creation. And what it tells us is that their natures are so different, they cannot be reconciled. So the alternative, the ego says, from reconciliation is to vacillate between two different viewpoints. And we all know what this is like because our minds do these things. We might have moments of great peace and grace, perhaps even spiritual insight, followed up perhaps within the same hour by a storm of thoughts and ideas and false perceptions. So neither one of those states represents either vacillating back and forth or attempting to reconcile the two. Neither one represents a state of peace. So that's one thing that we know to be true. The other is the theme that picks up from that we saw at the end of chapter 10 is a question of fatherhood and who is my father. Know that the ego wants to be, when we say father here, one of the meanings that can be attached to that is who is my source? Where do we come from? What caused our nature? What brought us into being? And of course, spiritually, that answer is obvious that the creator is our source. But the ego would propose an alternative, and the ego wishes to be your source, wishes for you to view the ego as the essence of your nature, as the originator of your self concept. And so that would introduce confusion. And so this is why there's the question, who is my father? And so it's a choice that we get in two different belief systems. And the one that you choose to be faithful to is the one that you will regard to be true. So we want to realize that our choices in these respects have impact on the way we think about ourselves and others and life itself.
Who is my father? Yet, what would you say to someone who believed this question really involves conflict? If you made the ego, how can the ego have made you? The authority problem is still the only source of conflict because the ego was made out of the wish of God's Son to father him. The ego, then, is nothing more than a delusional system in which you made your own father. Make no mistake about this. It sounds insane when it is stated with perfect honesty, but the ego never looks on what it does with perfect honesty. Yet that is its insane premise, which is carefully hidden in the dark cornerstone of its thought system. And either the ego, which you made, is your father, or its whole thought system will not stand.
Mhm. So this reiterates a vital point. I think it's the most crucial point. There is this insane premise which is carefully hidden in the dark cornerstone of its thought system. So, Linda, you wanted to know what it is that's hidden. Well, this is one of the things. This idea the ego has that it can be your source, and that's a confusion about which we refer to as the authority system. A So the ego began by challenging the father, the belief that the father's authority or source could be challenged and an alternative could be developed. So, and this develops a delusional system in which it seems as though your own thinking made your father. And so, while this is insane, that whole belief that you can make yourself, that you can decide what for yourself, what you are and what you're doing here, that belief is hidden in the dark cornerstones of the ego's thought system. And what the Course teaches us is if you dispel or undo that premise, that false starting point, then the entire ego thought system collapses. For in other words, if you remove the foundation, everything that stands on the foundation will fall. Its thought system will not stand.
You make by projection, but God creates by extension. The cornerstone of God's creation is you, for his thought system is light. Remember the rays that are there unseen. The more you approach the center of his thought system, the clearer the light becomes. The closer you come to the foundation of the ego's thought system, the darker and more obscure becomes the way. Yet even the little spark in your mind is enough to lighten it. Bring this light fearlessly with you and bravely hold it up to the foundation of the ego's thought system. Be willing to judge it with perfect honesty. Open the dark cornerstone of terror on which it rests and bring it out into the light. There you will see that it rested on meaninglessness, and that everything of which you have been afraid was based on nothing.
So this paragraph describes what I understand to be what we do when we study the text. We take the light and examine the ego's thought system and bring it out into the light. We bring this light fearlessly with us and bravely hold it up to the ego's thought system, where we can then choose again, because these beliefs have entered into the dark corners of our mind, that the ego's thought system was true. We can then bravely be willing to judge it again in perfect honesty. And I'll remind you that there is a proper use of judgment, and the one proper use of judgment is to judge the ego's thought system in the light, to judge it, not to criticize a person or an individual, but to judge the ego's thought system as being insane. So the Course teaches us to be willing to judge the ego's foundation with perfect honesty. And when we do so, we realize that's insane. That's not something that I want to continue to believe in. And this is what the undoing is. This allows us the freedom to then make a spiritually rational choice of choosing again to discard the ego's thought system and to move on to the guidance that the Holy Spirit gives us.
My brother, you are part of God and part of me. When you have at last looked at the ego's foundation without shrinking, you will also have looked upon ours. I come to you from our Father to offer you everything again. Do not refuse it in order to keep a dark cornerstone hidden, for its protection will not save you. I give you the lamp, and I will go with you. You will not take this journey alone. I will lead you to your true Father, who hath need of you, as I have. Will you not answer the call of love with joy?
So I'm feeling right now a strong impulse to make a comment about what is sometimes called spiritual bypassing, and also and that takes many various forms, whereby individuals refuse to look at the confusion of the ego and instead do what I call try to pole vault themselves into heaven, or try to leap up into an awakened state without first undoing the confusion of the ego. And obviously, what if someone were to attempt to do that, that would give you an awareness of some heavenly light, while there are still these hidden cornerstones of the ego in your mind, and that produces internal conflict. And so pay careful attention. I'm going to go back in a moment. The Course does encourage us to approach the center of God's thought system. But before that, or prior to that, you should think of it would have us at last look at the ego's foundation without fear, to hold the light up to the teachings of the ego, which is, I say, this is what we're doing when we read the text and study it, and attempt to understand with our own mind what it is that's being said here. We hold it, and this is done, I believe, in every section, certainly in every chapter. We hold the ego's belief system up to the light, and see that it has no value, it has no meaning. And so then you make a free will choice as to whether or not you still want to invest your faith in the ego's thought system or repurpose your faith, repurpose the power of your mind for belief in what we would call the call of love and joy. Would you not answer a call of love with joy? So, this was the introduction to chapter 11. We'll now go on to the first section, which is a lovely title called The Gifts of Fatherhood. And just a side comment here, because the gifts are referred to so many times in the Course of Miracles, but oftentimes it doesn't elaborate on what those gifts are. And so it's very reasonable for someone who's reading this to say, what gifts is it talking about? Because it mentions it so many times. So what I did is a more kind of a vast search. I used computer systems to help here to identify what gifts were specifically called out or what terms were associated with the Course's mention of gifts. And many of them appear here on this collage of spiritual gifts.
You have learned your need of healing. Would you bring anything else to the sonship, recognizing your need of healing for yourself? For in this lies the beginning of the return to knowledge, the foundation on which God will help build again the thought system you share with Him. Not one stone you place upon it, but will be blessed by Him, for you will be restoring the holy dwelling place of His Son, where He wills His Son to be and where He is. In whatever part of the mind of God's Son you restore this reality, you restore it to yourself. You dwell in the mind of God with your brother, for God Himself did not will to be alone.
Hmm. So this is really splendid what they say here as splendor. But let's notice that it starts with the theme of our need of healing. And I thought that this related to one of the 12 steps where we admitted that our lives had become unmanageable. That's an admission that we need to heal. And so it begins with the recognition of our need of healing, recognizing your need for yourself. And in that recognition is the beginning of our journey back home, the return to knowledge. This is the beginning of the establishing a new foundation. Remember, the ego established a false foundation, so to speak, sinking sand. Well, the healing is the beginning of a new foundation, which is built with a thought system that we share from heaven, and that we are supported by, we are blessed in building this new thought system. We are actually returning the portion of our mind that believed in the ego back home. The other portion of our mind never left, but obviously we would call it the conscious part of our mind that got confused by the dramas of time and space forgot about our foundation and is now being restored. So we talk about restoring the holy dwelling place. And we do this, we experience this in relationships with others, not by ourselves. It's a shared experience. It's an experience of the entire sonship of the whole. And so when we experience any part of it, we are experiencing part of God's mind, and we dwell in God's mind along with our brothers. We are not alone in this experience. And so it's very relational. That is the if I can use the word, playing field wherein we work at these things out.
To be alone is to be separated from infinity. But how can this be if infinity has no end? No one can be beyond the limitless, because what has no limits must be everywhere. There are no beginnings and no endings in God, whose universe is himself. Can you exclude yourself from the universe or from God, who is the universe? I and my Father are one with you, for you are part of us. Do you really believe that part of God can be missing or lost to him? If you were not part of God, his will would not be unified. Is this conceivable? Can part of his mind contain nothing? If your place in his mind cannot be filled by anyone except you, and your filling it was your creation, without you, there would be an empty place in God's mind. Extension cannot be blocked, and it has no voids. It continues forever, however much it is denied. Your denial of its reality may arrest it in time, but not in eternity. That is why your creations have not ceased to be extended, and why so much is waiting for your return.
Hmm. I really appreciate what I'll refer to as the spiritual logic that is embodied in here. The idea is that without you, there would be an empty place in God's mind. How could such a thing be possible? How could he have your light, your being in his mind, and then lose it? Not possible. Heidi?
Where it says, I and my Father are one with you, for you are part of us. Does that mean that we're God?
I would interpret it, Heidi, is that we are united with God. We are not. So the Course is clear. There is a creator who initiated all of creation. We are part of the creation, not the creator.
Okay.
But what is our relationship with the creator? Spiritually, we are united in one purpose and a common will. So, yes, here it says, you are part of us. Yes, it's spiritually united. And this whole program, Heidi, is dealing with the part of our mind that might believe it's different than being united. This whole program is undoing the thoughts that would believe in separating from the plan of God, the will of God.
Okay. Does God have a spirit?
We would say that God is spirit. does he have the Spirit? So the word have, we would say his nature and his being is spirit. It it's not flesh.
Okay.
It's not flesh and blood.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We would also say that God has a infinite mind. So he is both a spirit and has an infinite mind, and that our higher mind is a part of God's mind. As we just read, if how would it be possible for us not to be in God's mind when he created us as a part of his mind? It's just not possible. He would have lost us. So that what I take away from all this is an invitation to return to the awareness that we are a part of God's mind. You might, for those of you that read the last section in chapter 10, you'll recall that it encouraged us to acknowledge God each day, to just simply acknowledge the Creator as being our source, to recognize or recognize our relationship with the source. Well, that's a step, that's a way, a manner of recognizing that we have a place in God's mind.
Waiting is possible only in time, but time has no meaning. You who may delay can leave time behind simply by recognizing that neither beginnings nor endings were created by the Eternal, who placed no limits on his creation or upon those who create like him. You do not know this simply because you have tried to limit what he created, and so you believe that all creation is limited. How then could you know your creations, having denied infinity?
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about time and eternity, which we think of on the human side as being a paradox, difficult to reconcile. And there are reasons why we have difficulty with that, and they're mentioned right here. And that is because our human mind places limits on our concept of the creation. We tend to try to smash it into a small set of ideas and believe that it's limited. And the Course tells us that when we do that, it also places limits on the way we think about ourselves and our own potential. And so the Course would encourage us to let go of the concept of being a limited creation or having limits placed upon our own nature. So part of the problem is you have tried to limit what he created and thus believe all creation is limited. And so, how can we understand eternity if we attempt in our thought system to believe in littleness, in limitedlessness, in something that is not possible to go on forever? And so, if the Course implies here and in other places, if we were to let go of these barriers to our understanding and be open-minded and free-minded, then it says you could leave time behind. So David, here you might, I believe this to be literally, you can leave time behind How? By recognizing neither beginnings nor endings were created by the eternal, that there are no limits on creation, and there are no limits placed on what God created, meaning our spiritual being does not have limits placed on it. It is of the same nature as the creator itself, no limits. And so that's a bit abstract, but know that there is a place, not a place, there is an awareness of an unlimited creation. We may not yet be fully ready to accept that, but there is an awareness of an unlimited creation. And in that awareness is where we are truly free. And until then, we are not free. We are limited.
How then could you know your creations, having denied infinity? The laws of the universe do not permit contradiction. What holds for God holds for you. If you believe you are absent from God, you will believe that he is absent from you. Infinity is meaningless without you, and you are meaningless without God. There is no end to God and his Son, for we are the universe. God is not incomplete, and he is not childless. Because he did not will to be alone, he created a son like himself. Do not deny him his son, for your unwillingness to accept his fatherhood has denied you yours. See his creations as his son, for yours were created in honor of him. The universe of love does not stop because you do not see it, nor have your closed eyes lost the ability to see. Look upon the glory of his creation, and you will learn what God has kept for you.
I don't have any thoughts. Anybody want to make a comment? We'll go on.
I'll make a comment.
Sure, David. Thank you.
There's a line that jumped out at me. The universe of love does not stop because you do not see it. Nor have your closed eyes lost the ability to see. So it's telling me I just have to wake up. I have to open my eyes and see reality. But nothing stopped just because I don't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. That just jumped out at me.
Yeah. Thank you, David. What you just said reminds me of the adage, take time to stop and smell the roses. And I realized a few years back that all my life I would just pass by, pass by these flowers that were fragrant and everything. And I started, Eckhart Tolle talks about this as well. And I started to take the time to pause and just appreciate the roses. They have this tree right out on my front area, Franginapi tree. It's originally, I think, from Hawaii, or they make Hawaiian leaves, and it's very aromatic. And since it's right here, I could easily pass by on a regular basis and not take any note of it. And it's like it's always there, loving, offering its gift, if you will, But if my eyes are closed and my mind is preoccupied elsewhere, then I'm not going to see or appreciate the gift that it offers. And so I think this is true with all manner of things. The universe of love is there, but as David says, we have to be willing to take a divine pause and open our eyes to see it, to recognize what's already there.
God has given you a place in his mind that is yours forever. Yet you can keep it only by giving it, as it was given you. Could you be alone there when it was given you because God did not will to be alone? God's mind cannot be lessened. It can only be increased, for everything he creates has the function of creating. Love does not limit, and what it creates is not limited. To give without limit is God's will for you, because only this can bring you the joy that is his and that he wills to share with you. Your love is as boundless as his because it is his. Could any part of God be without his love? And could any part of his love be contained? God is your heritage because his one gift is himself. How can you give except like him if you would know his gift to you? Give then without limit and without end to learn how much he has given you. Your ability to accept him depends on your willingness to give as he gives. Your fatherhood and your Father are one. God wills to create, and your will is his. It follows then that you will to create, since your will follows from his. And being an extension of his will, yours must be the same.
There's a lot there, many takeaways that I think, again, follow this, what I would call simple spiritual logic. These are the laws of God. One is that everything the Creator creates also has the function of creating. He imparts his own ability to create to his entire creation. So therefore, we have the function of creating. I should footnote that to say, when forgiveness is complete, then we return to our function of creating. Prior to forgiveness being complete, healing is our function. So long term, our function is to return to creating. And forever, it creates without limit. And this is one of the great treasures, is how can we experience the joy that comes with love and creation? Joy is an attribute of love. Well, it says it right here, to give without limit. Only this can bring you the joy. What is the very first lesson of the Holy Spirit in chapter 6? To have
all, give all to all.
Give all to all. That lesson, the meaning of what that lesson entails, continues to expand. And that is for us to give without limit. It's God's will. And what is the resultant? This brings you the joy that is his. So that's really worth noting. The Course is very consistent throughout there, so that Holy Spirit lesson will keep the re-emerging again and again. And also, we had talked at the end, second half of chapter 10, about this idea of accepting the idea of God into your mind. By that, we mean no barriers, no resistance, no objections, no struggle with the idea of love, the idea of fatherhood, the idea of creator, to accept that fully without objection into our mind. Well, it refers to that here. Your ability to accept him depends upon your willingness to give as he gives. Go back to the first law of the Holy Spirit: to have, give all to all. And to do that, to be willing to give as he gives, then results in your ability to accept the Creator without putting limits on your relationship, which is what we've been talking about here, is our limiting, our little thinking causes us to narrow down our sense of our relationship with the Creator, and thus causes us to be skeptical of that relationship. Yeah. So where are we going with all this? And that is that our true, what we'll refer to as our divine will, our real willpower, free of all confusion of the ego's thought system, where forgiveness is complete. Our true will is a part of God's plan, is united in the mind of God. There's no conflict. And being an extension of his will, our will must be the same as God's will. So let me back up, and I didn't give an intro to that. At least in some traditions, I experienced the Christian tradition. It was all about wanting to do the will of God. And at least the way I experienced it, I realized I wasn't on the same page with God with a lot of things. I had my own plan, my own will, that I wanted things that I wanted to do my way that were not necessarily consistent with God's will. And so there was always this internal conflict I had between the idea of doing God's will and the idea of doing my will. Well, it turns out my will was the ego's version of my will, which we relabel in the Course as my wishes, the ego's wishes for things, its fantasies, its illusions, wanting to make its illusions real. And the Course differentiates those wishes from our real will, our divine will, our eternal will that is given us. And it says that they are always and forever the same, united. Again, Heidi, that we are in union with the will of God, with no perfect total acceptance, no resistance, no objections.
Yet what you will, you do not know. This is not strange when you realize that to deny is to not know. God's will is that you are his son. By denying this, you deny your own will. and therefore do not know what it is. You must ask what God's will is in everything, because it is yours. You do not know what it is, but the Holy Spirit remembers it for you. Ask Him, therefore, what God's will is for you, and He will tell you yours. It cannot be too often repeated that you do not know it. Whenever what the Holy Spirit tells you appears to be coercive, it is only because you have not recognized your will.
Okay, now they really are saying something important here. First of all, it cannot be too often repeated that you do not know God's will. So let's just take that as our baseline. But why? The truth is that God's will is that you are His son, but we don't know it because of denial. By denying that we are His son, you deny your own will and therefore do not know what it is. Translate, I'm going to interpret here. How is it that we are denying God's will? At, oops, I'm sorry, pressed the wrong button. Let's hope I can get back to where we just were. Oops. Technical malfunction sometimes happens. Whoops, pressed another button wrong. Really good at this. All right, I think we're back. Almost. One more, couple more buttons to press. You have no idea how many buttons there are. Okay. Is that look right? Somebody nod their head. Yeah, okay, good. So the issue is denial. And if you don't recognize the problem, it can't be solved. So we have to recognize what is it in our minds that is denying God's will, that interferes here. And the issue is every time you believe you are an ego, or every time you believe somebody else is an ego, you are denying their sonship. You're denying yourself. And as a result of that denial, you don't know God's will. So, I'll fess up, I'll own it. That happens to me from time to time. I'm not proud of it, but I wind up thinking that way. And that's denying that God is, that we all are His holy son. And so, again, if you pull on that thread and bring it out into the light and decide that I don't want to be judging others or myself as egos, I want to undo that. By undoing that, we allow room for us to affirm that the truth is true and the whole ego thought system unravels.
The projection of the ego makes it appear as if God's will is outside yourself and therefore not yours. In this interpretation, it seems possible for God's will and yours to conflict. God then may seem to demand of you what you do not want to give, and thus deprive you of what you want. Would God, who wants only your will, be capable of this? Your will is His life, which He has given to you. Even in time, you cannot live apart from Him. Sleep is not death. What He created can sleep, but cannot die. Immortality is His will for His Son, and His Son's will for Himself. God's Son cannot will death for Himself because His Father is life, and His Son is like Him. Creation is your will because it is his.
So we read earlier about limiting our concept of God and his plan and his will. Well, we do that in one way in which we do that is the mistaken belief is that his will is outside of ourselves. It's something external. That is limiting. That is a mistake. The truth is that we live and breathe and have our being according to his plan, his will. Hypothetically, if he were to withdraw his will from anyone, we would cease to exist. We would have no part in creation. We wouldn't be, we wouldn't have any form of life. So it's an impossibility. The truth is that we are woven into the very fabric of creation. Therefore, creation is our will. We can never be separate. This is a way of saying we cannot be separate from the will of God.
You cannot be happy unless you do what you will truly. And you cannot change this because it is immutable. It is immutable by God's will and yours, for otherwise his will would not be extended. You are afraid to know God's will because you believe it is not yours. This belief is your whole sickness and your whole fear. Every symptom of sickness and fear arises here because this is the belief that makes you want not to know. Believing this, you hide in darkness, denying that the light is in you.
This is a great example of how the Course speaks so plainly, so clearly, so simply. Let's put our finger on the problem that there's a fear of this concept of God's will that arises because we believe we're on a different page. I'm using a metaphor because it arises because we believe our plan for ourselves is so different than God's plan. What we learn in the Course is, yes, the ego has a, so to speak, plan. That differs from God's will. But our true heartfelt treasure has to do with love and peace and joy, and that is on perfectly united with God's will. But the belief that our will is different, here's where it says it very clearly, that belief is the whole source of all sickness and all fear arises right there from the idea of having a different will than the will of God. Again, pull on that string and the entire ego thought system unravels, it all collapses and has no meaning. Atisha?
Can you explain that first line? You cannot be happy unless you do what you will truly.
Yes. Thank you for even asking about it, because I meant to. This is going to be elaborated on in quite some detail in further chapters, but let me just set the context. Have you ever done something you didn't really want to do? Have you ever been in what we would call moral dilemma, where both you feel awkward about either choice, where you do something, but your heart is not in it? Well, the Course speaks about that. It refers to it as splitting yourself. You can sometimes do what other people want you to do, but not what you believe to be the better thing. I've done that before, and the all of that results in an inner conflict. So you cannot be happy when you're inwardly conflicted. The only way you can be happy is for your doing, your actions to be congruent, to be consistent with what you will deeply in your heart and soul. And so the various for, there are many different scenarios that arise out of what we're talking about, and they will be elaborated on further in future chapters. But that's what we're talking about, doing something where you have grave doubts about whether or not this is the right thing to do. The Course would recommend that we seek for spiritual guidance and that we don't act until we're coming from a place of inner peace about what we're about to do. That would be the check on this is when Holy Spirit gives you guidance, the feeling of that is one of inner peace. If you're afraid, reluctant, anxious in any way, it's an indication further guidance. We need to seek further guidance. And again, that could be as a result of being afraid. I've had this experience too. There was a sense that of what I wanted to do, and I had a sense of what God's will was for me, but I was afraid of what God's will was for me. I really wanted to do it my way. All of this results in inner conflict. Clearly, it's not a happy state. All symptoms of sickness and fear arise from this inner conflict.
You are asked to trust the Holy Spirit only because he speaks for you. He is the voice for God, but never forget that God did not will to be alone. He shares his will with you. He does not thrust it upon you. Always remember that what he gives, he keeps, so that nothing he gives can contradict him. You who share his life must share it to know it, for sharing is knowing. Blessed are you who learn that to hear the will of your Father is to know your own. For it is your will to be like him, whose will it is that it be so. God's will is that his Son be one and united with him in his oneness. That is why healing is the beginning of the recognition that your will is his. If sickness is separation, the will to heal and be healed is the first step toward recognizing what you truly want. Every attack is a step away from this, and every healing thought brings it closer.
Mm-hmm. So we conclude with some ideas that where we started. It's the recognition our lives have become unmanageable, that healing is needed. The will to heal and be healed is the first step towards recognizing what you truly want, moving out of the ego's thought system and into the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Healing is the beginning of the recognition your will is God's. So to reaffirm once again, while we're in this program of forgiveness, our function here in time and in this world is to heal. We're at the first step in the return to love. We're not finished that step. We're in the process of acquiring the ability to remember once again who we are and what our function is. Healing is the beginning. And the beauty of this program is that this first step points us consistently towards a long-term goal, which is to restore our minds to our awareness that our will is to do the will of God, that that's what makes us happy, that that's what makes us whole and complete. And so it's a wonderful set of guidance that we get here, and one that you can truly trust in. Atisha?
Yeah, I've definitely heard step 1 in this tonight, and I've also heard step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening, we extend this message to others. Yeah, so I'm hearing that in the ability and the sort of that directive to share.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that is the way we demonstrate to ourselves that it's real. Is in the moment that you share it with another, it clears all doubts. Yeah. So that's all that we have for this session. We'll pick it. You can see chapter 11 is really starts out on a very high plane. We'll have more to cover in our next session. I want to thank you all for your time here, to be able to come together in this kind of format and share is truly a blessing for us all. So I want to thank you. Thank you, Atisha, for your reading, and look forward to connecting again real soon. God bless.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
John.
Atisha. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you all.
Thanks a lot.
Have a blessed week.